Welcome to the Wicket.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Arab News' very own cricketing podcast, The Wicket. I'm your host, Brian Murgatroyd, and with me to discuss what's happening in the sport locally in the Gulf, regionally in Asia and worldwide, Arab News columnist Jon Pike and Arab News cricket reporter Subas Humagain. Hello, gentlemen.
Hello, Brian. Hi, Subas.
Hi, John. Hello, Brian.
And in this episode, we reflect upon the Super 8s stage of the ICC Men's T20 World Cup and look ahead to the semi-finals of the tournament. We discuss the two Ps coming out of this tournament, pitches and preparations, especially for the associate teams. We speak of two women's series that are ongoing, with Sri Lanka dominating the West Indies and India doing likewise against South Africa. We talk about David Johnson, the former India fast bowler who's died at the age of just 52. On top of that, as ever, Subas and Jon tell us what's caught their attention over the past week. There's plenty to pick apart then, so let's get underway. We really are at the business end of the ICC Men's T20 World Cup now, with just four teams left. India, Afghanistan, in the last four for the first time, South Africa, and defending champions England. Those sides won through to the semi-finals by finishing in the top two of their respective Super 8s groups. And it means that South Africa will face Afghanistan in Trinidad and Tobago on Wednesday night local time, with England playing India in a repeat of the semi-final meeting between the two in Australia 2 years ago. This time they'll face off against each other in Guyana on Thursday morning local time. Those four sides won through at the expense of Australia and Bangladesh in Group 1 and the co-hosts, the West Indies and the USA, in Group 2. What we'll do here is to chat about the four sides who've made it through and then the four sides who didn't. And if you'd like to hear our views on the other 12 sides who've taken part in the event, then please have a listen, if you haven't done so already, to the previous episode of The Wicket, where we chat about each in turn. Let's start then in Group 1, where India and Afghanistan finished in the top two. India progressed as one of the two unbeaten sides up to this stage of the tournament, with comfortable wins over Afghanistan, Bangladesh and Australia. Jon, Virat Kohli is still searching for his best form, although Rohit Sharma, he showed his outstanding quality against Australia in that last group game. But aside from Virat, it seems to be a case of most things coming together for India. We've mentioned Rohit there. Surya Kumar Yadav scored an impressive half-century on a pitch that everyone else struggled on against Afghanistan in Barbados. And Hardik Pandya did likewise to brush aside Bangladesh. Shivam Dubey got runs in that match too, an important middle-order contribution. It's all looking rosy in the garden for India, isn't it?
Yes, it is, all apart from Virat, as you say, now that Rohit scorched his way to 92 against Australia to set the trend for that innings. But I think the other thing to take into account is that the bowlers are all taking wickets. Against Australia, for example, Arshdeep Singh took 3 and Yadav claimed 2.
Yes, happy days from that perspective for India. Subas, you predicted in a previous episode, and it's come to pass, that India have flipped around the balance of their attack since arriving in the Caribbean, with 3 spinners now, supplementing 2 fast bowlers and the all-rounder in Hardik.
Yeah, I think that was predicted with the squad they announced. They had Kuldeep and Chahal warming the bench all through the US League, and we knew that anyone who was going to play is going to have an impact, and I think the Australia match is a perfect example to see how Kuldeep changed the scenario of the game. Australia were unsung to get the win, but that excellent catch from Akshar of Kuldeep, and I think that was the turning point of the game, that Kuldeep had that excellent spell where bowlers were going over 10 and he was just on the 6. So I think that the impact will grow with the semi-final being played on a similar surface. I think that's all unplanned what India wanted.
Jon, how important, both in terms of knocking out a dangerous opponent, but also psychologically, was India's win against Australia?
Huge, I would say. It almost cast off the shadow of the ODI final defeat last year, which I guess will only fade if India win this tournament.
We'll come on to Australia in more detail shortly, but the other side to progress from Group 1 is Afghanistan, and they certainly did it in dramatic fashion, winning a low-scoring thriller in St Vincent and the Grenadines, scoring 115 for 5, and then through rain interruptions, injury issues, most notably for Ramanullah Gurbas, who had to go off after taking a ball on the knee while keeping wicket, and a terrific innings by Liton Das of Bangladesh, who carried his bat for an unbeaten 54. Afghanistan won by 8 runs by the Duckworth-Lewis-Stern method to make it through as Naveen ul Haq and Rashid Khan took 4 wickets apiece. It's their first time in a senior ICC men's semi-final at a major event, but Subas, given the cavalcade of stars in their squad, can we call this a shock, or should we be saying simply this is the minimum requirement for a side with the talent that it has at its disposal?
I think it's not a shock. It was a long time coming. We've seen it in the ODI World Cup. We've seen it in the Asia Cup. They were so close, but minor mistakes stopped them from going through. And I think they were above Bangladesh. I could say even Sri Lanka with the way they have been playing. The team they have, the balance in the squad they have, and I think the most important part is the pace attack that has been firing this time. Fazalak and Navinullah. I think they're excellent at top and the depth, and that gives a liberty to Rashid Khan and Ru to attack in the middle overs as well. So it's a team effort that's common well, and I think they're taking match by match. They've Dwayne Bravo and Joan Trott at the sidelines, always getting involved. I think we rarely see cricket coaches getting involved as much as they have been. So it's a result of team effort that was missing in the last few years.
Did you always believe they'd win on the night, given the way the match swung, first one way, then the other?
Not until Rashid Khan took Mahmudullah and Risat for that 2 wickets in 2 balls. I think that's where the match turned. Liton Das was counter-attacking. I think to bat second in that pitch is always difficult. We've seen in the past matches as well. But after that, Rashid's over. The match was on their favour.
And Subas, what a great story from their win against Australia as well, with Gulbuddin Naib, who, along with Mohammed Nabi, was part of their squad that played in World Cricket League Division 5 more than 15 years ago. And they're now making key contributions with the ball. And, of course, Gulbuddin, his 4 wickets propelled the side to an all-important victory over Mitchell Marsh's lineup.
Yeah, I still remember 2008, we lost to Afghanistan in the semi-finals of that Division 5. And then Afghanistan went on to win the Division 4-3 and get to the qualifiers and get the ODI status. They haven't looked back since then, but we've struggled in the World Cricket League scenario for a long time, and we made the journey hard one. But I think Afghanistan deserve all of it, especially Naib and Navi. I think both have been through a lot of Navi's journey himself. Naib, I think he was out of the team in the middle one, but he's made a great comeback, and he was in the game for some different reasons. But I think that wicket towards the end that sums up his contribution, and that Australia win. I think that was the most important part after that New Zealand win for them.
Yes, we should just mention that Gulbuddin Naib was involved in a little bit of controversy in the game against Bangladesh, where he went down, indicating he had cramp, and went down very dramatically indeed because the rain was falling and Afghanistan were just ahead on Duckworth-Lewis-Stern, and that left a nasty taste in a few people's mouths, I know, but thankfully all's well that ends well, certainly from an Afghanistan perspective. They're through to the semi-finals. Jon, you were a sceptic about their chances early on in the tournament, but with wins against New Zealand and Australia, and now this victory against Bangladesh, have you become a believer, or can you point to the losses against the West Indies and India to indicate the fact that they're still not quite at the very highest level?
Well, to be honest, I was shocked to wake up to the news of the win over Australia, so I think that has to make me and probably them believe even more. I mean, the team has a solid spine. When you think about Gabaz, 281 runs, leading run scorer, not far behind is Zadran, and Faruqi's 16 wickets, puts him at the top of that table. The support has been inconsistent, especially in the middle order, and I think that's an area where they still need to improve. But they are in the semis, and I think, like Subas has just mentioned, the role of Jonathan Trott in this is being, I think, undersung.
Well, from Group 2, the semi-finalists are South Africa and England. And like India, South Africa are yet to lose a game. It's a remarkable run, as they could quite easily have lost every single match they've played. So fine have the margins been, with their Super 8 wins over England by 7 runs and the West Indies by 3 wickets, the latest illustrations of that point. Subas, do these results and the way South Africa have got across the line each time really show a side that's finally shaken off that tag of chokers?
Yeah, I think that's just so. In every match, they've had a hero. They've had someone to step up in the final over. Kagiso Rabada being one of them, in for a different reason. They've won the close matches. That's been the difference in previous instance and now. And they've got Afghanistan in the semi-finals. I think everyone who would made top four would handpick Afghanistan for their semi-final game. But knowing South Africa, knowing how big chokers they are, as you mentioned in the big occasions, I think they should go back to the game, focus like it's any other game. But the way they have been performing, I think this is a huge result for them. Be it Nepal game or even Bangladesh game, they were out of the scene until 17th over, but they have made a comeback. And it's been a routine, so I think that will make a different scenario in the dressing room, but they still need to step up batting-wise.
Jon, what's impressed you about South Africa thus far?
Well, their ability to adapt to different pitch conditions, the recovery from a series of bad starts, and batting from a lower order. I don't think we've previously seen. Look at some of the shots that Rabada played. And of course, the newfound mentality, which you and Subas have mentioned. And I assume that much credit needs to go to the captain, Aidan Markram, and the new coach, Rob Walter, who's another one who seems to go under the radar.
Yeah, spot on there, Jon. No question about that. But what of England? Well, they've made it hard for themselves by losing to South Africa in a match they really should have won in the Super 8s, failing to chase down a seemingly below par score in St. Lucia on the best batting surface of the tournament. But excellent wins over the West Indies and the USA mean they're still in there with a chance of becoming the first side to retain the men's T20 title. Jon, England, certainly from the outside now, look a very impressive outfit again all of a sudden, don't they? Jofra Archer's bowling thunderbolts. They've got plenty of options with bat and ball, and Adil Rashid on pitches that are very much assisting spin bowling. He looks mighty impressive.
Well, I think Adil is and has been a real star in this tournament. I still don't know what to make of them. One day they look like world beaters, another day they lose their way. And I think quite a bit of this has got to do with team selection. So I'm hoping that the former characteristic, looking like world beaters, shows up in the semi-final.
Well, we shall see, I guess. Time will tell on that one. Subas, you didn't tip England to get into the semi-finals in our last episode, but they're there now. What are your thoughts on them at this stage?
Well, as John mentioned, the consistency has become a huge question. One day they look like world beaters. Josh Butler's inning, for instance, against USA, I think was more than what they wanted, but that's a statement on how they can play. And India, England, I think both these teams have players who played together in a lot of franchise league as well, especially in the IPL for a long time. They know each other well. So I think the battle is in between the individuals rather than the team now. And a semi-final of a World Cup, I think India will be under bigger pressure than England is, having seen them throughout this tournament. So I still think India are better side than England, but you never know what England can bring in the table.
That's 4 then who've made it to the semi-finals. But what about the 4 Super 8s teams that have fallen by the wayside? Australia and Bangladesh from Group 1, and the co-hosts, the West Indies and the USA in Group 2. Subas, let's talk about Australia first. They'll have gone through agony watching that Afghanistan-Bangladesh game, knowing a Bangladesh win, if it was achieved from the 13th over onwards, would have taken them through. But before that match, let's reflect back on a decision Australia took previously. You and I watched the 3 group games in St. Vincent, all of them won by sides batting first, as was the crucial Afghanistan-Bangladesh match, which ended the Super 8 stage. What do you think could possibly have persuaded Australia's brains trust to win the toss and bowl first there against Afghanistan on a surface we'd already seen 3 times up to that point was very difficult to chase on? That has to be up there as one of the biggest tactical missteps of the tournament, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think as Mitsmar said in the toss, they assessed the condition, made the change, but I don't think they assessed the conditions as well as other teams did. We've seen how hard it is to bat in the second innings and how big of a bowler's game it is. And with the kind of bowlers Australia had, I think it was a no-brainer to bat first. But I think Australia got ahead of themselves thinking about rain against India, and I think they're just trying to better the run rate and all. But what they failed was to stay in the present, and I think they took Afghanistan a bit lightly, thinking they will win the match anyway, and they were more focused on run rate rather than the match itself. And Afghanistan, you take match by match, like Jonathan Trott said, and they just got rewarded of it. At one time, it looked like Maxwell would repeat what he did in the India leg of World Cup, but it was too far to call in such tough conditions.
John, how much of a missed opportunity is this for Australia? They were unbeaten in the first round, had an experienced lineup with all bases covered, and had the chance to become the first men's side to hold ICC silverware in all three formats simultaneously, but that chance has now slipped through their fingers.
It certainly has. Missed opportunity. Morris said it wasn't a matter of bat first, bowl first, but an unaccustomedly shoddy performance in the field, which it was. But then how did that come about? Looks like they got suckered into pitch reports, as you say, and played Agar instead of Stark. And perhaps, as I think Subas has alluded to, they were a little complacent or even presumptuous.
Well, we should, of course, mention Pat Cummins at this point with successive hat-tricks against Bangladesh and Afghanistan. What an incredible achievement that is. Chris Jordan of England also took a hat-trick against the USA in his native Barbados, part of a haul of 4 wickets in 5 balls. Here again, then, further evidence that it's been a bowler's tournament. Well, alongside Australia, the other side to miss out in Group 1 was Bangladesh. They lost to Australia, India, and, of course, Afghanistan. John, can we regard this tournament as a success for Bangladesh, a side that isn't really spoken of as a contender? Because right up until that last game against Afghanistan, they were actually in contention for a semi-final spot.
Yes, on that basis, I think we would regard it not as a success, and they could have done better. It seems that Najmal Hussain Shanto has captained well. He even had the temerity to restrict Shakib Al Hassan to a single over against South Africa. However, his batting only started to fire in recent matches, and of course it failed against Afghanistan. And his runs are very badly needed by a team that struggles for them, as seen in the match against Afghanistan. But I think on the bright side, they've got young players coming through.
Yes, batting was the Achilles heel for Bangladesh almost throughout the tournament. Subas, looking at Bangladesh with the likes of fast bowler Tanzim Hassan Saqib, middle order finisher Taurid Hridoy, and leg spinner Rishad Hossain, who's also capable with the bat and catches pigeons in the gully, a bit like Australia's Cameron Green, they do have the potential for some exciting times ahead, don't they?
Yeah, indeed. And they have Nazmul captain, who's a very young and very proactive captain, who's a player suited for all 3 formats. And to add up, the under-19 team is better than ever. A lot of World Cup holders are yet to play for the senior side, and the BPL has done wonders. I think Tawhid Hridoy is one of the examples how a good franchise domestic cricket does to a team. Zakir Ali didn't fire pretty well this tournament, but I think he's quite young potential too. The only issue was Tanzil Hassan at the top, getting numerous opportunities and not firing. But overall, I think individual-wise, this was a great tournament for Tanzim Hassan Saqib especially, and a lot of eyes in franchise cricket will be on him now.
Into Group 2, and the West Indies and the USA missed out on progress to the semi-finals. For one of those sides, it was a massive missed opportunity, while for another, it was a very creditable effort to get that far in the first place. Let's talk West Indies first of all. Captain Rovman Powell, after the loss to South Africa, which sealed the side's exit, tried to paint it with the glass half full. That may be fair enough in one respect after the failure to qualify for the 50-over Cricket World Cup last year, and the fact the side has climbed into the top 3 of the ICC rankings, having been 9th a year ago. But all the same, John, with a team packed with T20 stars and on home soil, this has to be seen as a significant failure, doesn't it?
Yes, and you could see the disappointment etched on the faces of the team, the coaches and supporters. At the crunch, they didn't post enough runs against South Africa and then faced a rain delay. I think with South Africa of 15 for 2. So a bit of misfortune there, and who knows what might have happened without the rain. And Nicholas Pooran led the way with 228 runs and 17 sixes. Perhaps playing together more often may help, but what are the chances of that happening? Very slim, I would think.
Yes, all those players will disappear off to different leagues now, I'm sure. Subhash, injuries and mixed form haven't helped the side, and against South Africa, they had a makeshift opening pair of Shai Hope and Kyle Mayers, having started the tournament with Brandon King and Johnson Charles. But the West Indies did themselves no favours too, did they? 57 dot balls in that loss against South Africa, a failure to rotate the strike, looking for big shots instead. That cost them dear, didn't it?
Yeah, John mentioned, I think the middle order didn't play as per the conditions. And when you have Powell, Pooran, and Rutherford not getting amongst the runs, I think that's where they lost the game. They were supposed to accelerate the innings after that wicket saving innings from Rosenthal. I think he did his job striking at 120. That's what he does. He played his role, but down the order, I think Powell, Rutherford should have taken the responsibility of getting to a better score and putting up 135. They still made up game. The bowlers came back well, but South Africa, as we mentioned, I think this time they're bound to do something special.
And Subhash, John has alluded to this already. Rovman Powell spoke about the buzz being back in West Indies cricket, but many of the big name players will now disperse once again onto the T20 circuit. There are tournaments in Canada, the USA, there's the 100 in the UK and the CPL coming up. How long can any feel-good factor around West Indies cricket last?
Well, the franchise versus national team is going to be even bigger when the players West Indies has. I think it will be tough to keep players who are not aligning to sign central contracts and instead looking for franchise leagues. It's fine until there's no big tournament, but then again, if the big tournaments like World Cup comes around, these players would want to come in, and those players who played when these players were in franchise league, there will be a selection headache for the coaches. There will be questions of loyalty as well, and West Indies itself, it's a different world rather than other cricket boards, so it's a tough situation. I think Kishore Shallow is going to have a hard time after this World Cup to see how the West Indies cricket goes on from here.
John, what about the USA? 3 heavy defeats in the Super 8s. It's fair to say they ran out of steam, perhaps, but should we be too critical of them for that? Is there still plenty to be positive about moving forward?
I don't think we should be too critical. As you say, it's a very creditable performance with positives. I wonder how they will carry their learning forward into future matches and tournaments. And I think that's something that we'll have to wait and see about.
Subhash, there's also the curious case of Monank Patel, the captain, who missed the last half of the tournament through injury, with at least one report I saw suggesting it was the result of an accident on the team bus celebrating the win over Pakistan in round 1. What do you make of that?
A bizarre one. I think captain was on form, leading the batting order at top, and straight away he's out of the scene. I think US cricket could have used him for better with Andrews House playing so well. Stephen Taylor not so much. Monank's presence would certainly have helped, and they even tried that big game against India, Sain Jahangir. I think he failed, and Monank was sorely missed. And in situations like this, I think you should be bigger than the occasion. They beat Pakistan, but there was bigger occasion awaiting for him, and this is a great learning lesson for me.
And John, Major League Cricket is next on the agenda now for many of these USA players, but can they and coach Stuart Law maintain the momentum that's been generated around this cup run and ensure they're even more competitive now in 2 years' time, as, of course, having made the Super 8s, they've already qualified for that next event in India and Sri Lanka?
Well, that's the big challenge. It does depend on how much the current players can improve and what new ones come through. Of course, that next tournament is in India and Sri Lanka, which is going to be tough. No home support, which will obviously avoid them this time round.
Well, before we look ahead to the semi-finals, let's talk about 2 other issues around the tournament. And the first is one that we seem to have spoken of in every episode connected with the ICC Men's T20 World Cup, the pitches. The surfaces in St. Lucia and to an extent Antigua have been decent, but the ones in St. Vincent and Barbados have been, well, to say the least, suboptimal, to go along with the poor surfaces we saw in the USA during round 1. John, do you have concerns for the pitch in Barbados for the final, that we won't see a spectacle befitting the ultimate match of this tournament? We've spoken of the lack of grass on the whole square right from the get-go here at the Wicket, and in the match between the USA and England, the ball turned appreciably. On that basis, batting could be very hard work work for that final match, couldn't it?
Yes, I do have concerns. But then, of course, it would be in keeping with most of the rest of the tournament. And it might look very odd and very curious if the best wicket emerges for the final. We've also got concern about the possibility of rain, which generally I don't think has helped the fluidity of this tournament.
Yes, rain has been another major problem for the event, but we shouldn't really be surprised about that because, of course, the event is taking place in hurricane season in the Caribbean because it's been pushed back due to the IPL. Sabash, how many of the pitches for this tournament do you think will have been marked average or above by the ICC match referees looking on? And I wonder too whether we should be critical or simply accept that the tournament, as we've mentioned, is being played out of season. So we have to say, okay, the pitches aren't going to be as good as we would like them to be.
Well, in ideal World Cup, I think we should have the better facilities and better pitches. As New York pitches say, I think that was the tournament was bigger than the game this time. They brought in drop-in pitches that was not tested. The race against the time for the outfield and all was fine, but as long as there are no good pitches, you don't have good cricket, and that's what we saw. Even in Dallas, I think the pitch was nice for the first few games, but it deteriorated in the last few games. And Florida, we've forgotten there was a tournament in Florida itself, only one match that to rain affected. So I think things could have been better. And ICC, I think this is a great learning lesson for them on whom to prioritize, whether the tournament or the game itself.
Well, the other subject we should deal with here is the preparations for the associate teams ahead of the next event in 2 years' time. Many of the second-tier teams playing in this tournament, have struggled to play fixtures against the leading sides in the lead-up, and surely the opportunity to do that has to be the key to enable them to bridge any gap to those elite lineups. John, how do we fix this problem going forward? It's a major issue, isn't it?
Yes, it is, and fixing it has a number of difficulties. If one were to be cynical, one might reason that it is not in the best interest of full members to encourage associates to get better to the point where they beat them with frequency. The ICC don't seem to be acting with alacrity in granting new full member status. Scotland must surely be close to fulfilling requirements, especially with the improvement in their women's team. And what of the Netherlands? The problem then is also that Test cricket has been pushed back. So is there a case for an intermediate category of full member, white ball only?
You mentioned Scotland there, of course, and the Netherlands too. And one thing that they're lacking at the moment is a first-class structure. Even Ireland at the moment aren't playing first-class cricket, although they're trying to get that ship sailing again post-COVID. Sabash, is it something the ICC full members simply don't care about, the idea of giving associates a decent amount of cricket leading into tournaments?
Well, we can't call it that, but I think they're looking at more business side of things rather than cricket side of things. We see UAE getting to play against some full members in the UAE, but the boards, they simply care about the business side more than the cricket. But what they should know is if the cricket grows, the business in that area grows as well. So if you look at the FTP, there are rarely any associate teams playing against the test nations. So given the volume of cricket that associate teams will be playing in the World Cups and the qualifiers, it would be good if there are some series at least for these teams to play.
Well, common sense from Sabash there. If cricket thrives, the business thrives. I wish at times that everyone realised that. Finally, gentlemen, it's time to put your necks on the block. Please pick a winner for the tournament and explain the reason or reasons for your choice. Sabash, first of all.
I'm going with South Africa, the way they've been playing, the way they've been tested, and they've come up. I think they've got their all sort ready. Their spinners have been tested, their batting order have been tested. It's the top order that really needs firing, and I think it's time that they get rid of the chokers tag and this crop of players. I think they're, like I said in previous episodes as well, they're T20 specialists all gelled up in one, and we've seen in social media how close they've been playing together off the field as well. So I think this is the time for South Africa to make something special.
Well, that would be history in the making if they could lift that silverware. John, what about you? What do you think?
I can't see beyond India now that Australia have gone. Clearly, Rohit is on a mission, angry against Australia for the slights caused by the ODI final, no doubt, something Australia must have expected. Several weeks ago, you asked what effect the departure of Dravid may have, a unifying or dissembling one. We may conclude that this is a swan song for several players, so what better motivation is required?
Well, there we are. You heard it first. Subas is going for South Africa. Jon is going for India. I think I'm tempted to jump on Jon's bandwagon there and go for India as well, particularly given the conditions in Barbados and the fact that India have got those top quality spinners to call upon. But by the time of our next episode, we'll know if all these predictions have come true, and we'll be back next time to wrap up the closing stages of the tournament for you here at the Wicket. The West Indies women's tour of Sri Lanka has continued to prove much more one-sided than many would have expected before a ball was bowled. Sri Lanka won the three-match one-day international series 3-0, securing the third and final match by a massive 160 runs, scoring 275 for 6, with captain Chamari Atapattu top scoring with 91, before the West Indies folded for only 115 as 22-year-old left-arm spinner Sachini Nisanansala took 5 for 28. West Indies captain Hayley Matthews missed that match, as she had done in match 2 as well, which we covered in the previous episode of The Wicket, struck down by illness, and although she returned for the first of 3 2020 internationals, she couldn't stop the losing habit, as Sri Lanka restricted the touring side to 134 for 8, winning by 4 wickets with 8 balls in hand. Atapattu started with the ball this time, opening the bowling with her accurate medium paces to take 4 for 29. It was Sri Lanka's first T20I win over the West Indies since 2015, and it sets them up nicely, not only for the remaining 2 matches of the series, but also for the T20 World Cup in Bangladesh in October. Remember, they had to qualify for that event, and they won the qualifier in the UAE in April and May of this year. Jon, we were singing the praises of the West Indies after their impressive tour of Pakistan earlier this year, when Hayley Matthews could do no wrong. Are these results putting that tour into context and suggesting that Pakistan really are a very poor side, and so the West Indies were flattered by those results on that occasion?
Yes, I think there has to be an element of that, especially given Pakistan's performance in England.
Subas, this tour is proving a triumph for Sri Lanka as multiple players, the most recent being Nisanansala plus Nilakshika Silva and wicketkeeper batter Anushka Sanjiwani. They both scored half centuries in the win in the third and final one-day international. These players have stepped up. So what's gone so right for them this time? And after the win in May's T20 World Cup qualifier final, do you think, Sri Lanka make an impact in October's tournament in Bangladesh?
Well, that seems to be the case after Athapattu came up publicly saying the players have to step up. We've seen numerous individual performance, match-winning performance, and these players have just stepped up. And in the bowling unit, if you see, there have been support to Samari as well, Kavisha Dilhari being exceptional in the T20s as well as the ODIs. So Sri Lanka look to be on song, and what better time to prepare than the World Cup?
Incidentally, the 3-0 series one-day international win against the West Indies has placed Sri Lanka in prime position to play in the next 50-over World Cup without the need to go through a qualifier. That's because those matches formed part of the ICC Women's Championship. A reminder, there are 10 teams in that Women's Championship table, with the top half of the ladder qualifying automatically for the Women's World Cup in India in 2025, while the sides in the bottom half have to go through the qualifier. The current order is Australia, who've qualified anyway as holders of the title, South Africa, England, Sri Lanka, India, who've also qualified automatically as hosts, New Zealand, Pakistan, West Indies, Bangladesh, and Ireland. Sri Lanka are now 6 points ahead of the West Indies with 3 games left to play, while the West Indies have 6 matches in hand. New Zealand are also a side to keep an eye out for, as they have a series in England getting underway as we record this episode, and they need wins to ensure they avoid the possibility of having to play in that qualifying tournament. We'll update you on the finish of the Sri Lanka West Indies series in our next episode, along with chatting about the start of that England-New Zealand series too. It's also worth mentioning that for Sri Lanka, The successes against the West Indies are also a perfect lead-in to the Women's T20 Asia Cup, which is happening in Dambulla in the dry region of Sri Lanka starting next month. From July the 19th, 8 sides at Sri Lanka as hosts. Bangladesh, India, Malaysia, Nepal, Pakistan, Thailand, and the UAE will be facing each other for the title of the continent's top side, and we'll cover that off in future episodes of The Wicket. India's women have impressed in hosting South Africa in a one-day international series, winning matches 1 and 3 with a fair degree of comfort, while sandwiched in between those two matches, the two teams played out a thriller, which India won by 4 runs as South Africa fell just short in chasing the home side's 325 for 3. That second match saw a host of records fall, including the fastest hundreds by both the South Africa and India women's batter in the format, as Marizanne Kapp reached 3 figures in 85 balls, while India captain Harmanpreet Kaur did likewise in 87 deliveries. The match also saw 2 other players, South Africa captain Laura Volvaert and Smriti Mandhana of India, reach hundreds of their own, and that made it the first time in a women's one-day international that 4 players had scored centuries. It was also the India women's side's first 300-plus score in a home one-day international, while Smriti Mandhana scored back-to-back hundreds, plus 90 in match 3. And in the series, her scores of 117 and 136 plus that 90 saw her increase the highest scores by an Indian woman in the format. John, India were dominant, and it was a mighty impressive display from them. What stood out for you?
Well, apart from Mandana's masterclasses, India's bowlers seem to be steadily improving. Alanati Reddy impressed in the third match in particular. They're also addressing their top order strength, which I've questioned in the past, with a special focus on the number 3 spot, where Priya Punia is getting a chance after 3 others have been tried in the last couple of years.
Subas, South Africa will really feel that after Volvaert and Kapp's hundreds, which rescued them for 67 for 3 in that second game, they really should have won that match. They needed 6 from the final 4 balls, but couldn't get over the line. How do you reflect on that loss and the series as a whole from South Africa's perspective?
I think it's a big chance missed to make a history. Could have been a world record chase, and I think the skipper Laura Wolbert, I think she would be gutted that she missed that full toss first ball of the last over, 11 of 6. It was South Africa's game to lose, and even after getting 5 runs off first 2 balls, bad luck, they lost 2 wickets in a row, and it was a tough call for the last ball from the captain. But overall, a good statement. 650 runs in a women's ODI match, and we saw some crowd gearing up after that back-to-back 100 from Smriti in the third match. So everything's good for women cricket.
The ODI series was also part of the Women's Championship we mentioned earlier, and although South Africa lost, they still look secure in the top half of the table and should be okay to secure an automatic spot in the 2025 Women's World Cup in India. Indeed, this should be good preparation for them despite the result. Next up, it's a test match between the two sides, and then they meet in 3 2020 internationals, and we'll speak about that test in our next episode. Another news line for you, and since our last podcast, there's been some sad news with the death of former India fast bowler David Johnson, aged 52. David played 2 tests for India against Australia at home and South Africa away in 1996, taking 3 wickets, and was highly regarded for his pace at a time when Indian cricket was short of bowlers with that attribute. Subas, it seems to have been a case of a player playing at the wrong time, really, because if you look at India's setup now and the way their players are looked after, he may well have been better suited to this era than the mid to late 1990s.
Indeed, even now there are very less pacers that India has. We can take example of Umran Malik, Mayank Yadav. If there's express pace in India, they already garner headlines, and the fans look forward to having them in the national team. So to have 150 plus bowlers at that age, I think he was way ahead of his time, and he'll be sorely missed, even though he was not quite represented in the national team.
And John, tributes paid to him by Sachin Tendulkar, Sanjay Mandraker, Anil Kumble, amongst many, many others. That indicates a player who was extremely well thought of, doesn't it?
Tendulkar described him as full of life, others as an affable person and a cherished teammate. So it was a sad end to fall from the balcony of his fourth floor apartment. He was admitted to hospital last week complaining of stomach pains and had been battling health problems. Interesting, his 3 test wickets were Michael Slater, Herschel Gibbs and Brian McMillan. Not at all shabby in that respect, but his pace was not matched by adequate levels of control.
And finally, gentlemen, as we always do, let's hear from you about something that's caught your attention this week in the world of cricket. John, first of all.
Well, Afghanistan's celebrations after beating Australia on the team bus, and they were singing their coach's song, that's Dwayne Bravo's, in a much published video. I wonder what those celebrations are going to be like right now as they celebrate getting into the semi-finals. I just hope they don't invite Monak Patel into the bus.
Yes, I was just about to suggest that, John. Whatever they do, avoid getting Monak Patel after his accident against Pakistan. That's very good thinking on your part there. Subas, what's tickled your fancy?
Well, India announcing their squad for Zimbabwe series. The way the squad has been announced, I think they're ready to get to the next level, giving youngsters a chance. Subman Gill leading the team. So looks like Gautam Gambhir has his plan in place already.
Yes, Shubman Gill will captain that side, and it's a side full of youthful promise. Abhishek Sharma there as well. We know how well he played, of course, in the IPL alongside Travis Head. Rinku Singh, I know a favourite of yours, Subhash, Sanjay Samson, Dhruv Jurel. It really is an exciting looking lineup, and that'll be a series really to watch, won't it?
I think they're preparing themselves for the next edition as well, and taking the approach that Australia has taken for a long time now, rather than get along with the players who were suited for Test and ODI cricket, experienced one. I think time for them to have T20 special squad with full of youngsters who have impressed in the IPL.
Yes, exciting times for Indian cricket. Let's see if they're going to be celebrating at the end of the ICC Men's T20 World Cup. That's all to come, but that's all now for this episode of The Wicket. We'll be back soon with more cricket chat from the Gulf region, Asia and worldwide. As ever, please don't forget to like, subscribe and comment on what you've heard wherever you get your podcast. Thanks indeed, and we look forward to your company again next time.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.